Welcome to Beyond the Clinic, the podcast for health professionals ready to transform their expertise into innovative income streams that extend beyond the traditional clinic model. I'm Sarah Armand-Bushell. I'm a registered dietitian and certified business coach and proud owner of 2 successful online businesses. I understand the leap from the security of a regular salary can feel intimidating because I've been there too. But it doesn't have to be scary, and you do not have to do this alone. Here you'll learn tangible strategies to accelerate your business growth. So if you're dreaming of using your expertise to create impact and a life of freedom, then you're in the right place. Welcome back to Beyond the Clinic. Now, I want to start today's episode with something that I see all the time inside my community. It's health professionals who are doing all of the right things. They're showing up, they're posting, they're having conversations, they're even getting inquiries. And yet, when it comes to actually signing clients, something just isn't clicking. And more often than not, the instinct is to think, I just need to get more visibility. I need more followers. I need more leads. But in reality, that's not always the problem. Because what I see time and time again is that there are people already in your world who are interested, but they're watching, they're engaging, they are almost ready, but they're just not buying. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into today, because it's this where small shifts can actually make a massive difference, not just to your income, but to your confidence as a business owner as well. So today I have invited Adam Lowther onto the podcast. Now, Adam specializes in helping coaches and consultants understand what's happening between someone showing interest and actually becoming a paying client. He looks at the full journey from initial inquiry through the sales conversation, and helps you identify where things might be dropping off and what to do about it. And what I think is particularly useful to know about Adam's work, and actually it's why I wanted to bring him on the show, is that he focuses on improving what's already there. So he's not really just going to be making you go to look for more and more potential clients, but it's all about actually understanding why the people who are already interested aren't actually moving forwards and booking in with you. Because often it's not about doing more, it's about doing a few key things differently. So in this conversation, we're going to break all of that down. So what is really happening when someone doesn't go ahead and work with you? What makes a conversation convert and actually what stops it? And how to approach sales in a way that feels simple and aligned with our values as healthcare professionals, so that you can start turning more of those discovery call clients into actual clients. Does that sound good? Well, let's dive in. So welcome, Adam. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. That was a great intro. I couldn't have asked for a better one.
You're so welcome. And just to give everybody a little bit of a backstory, thought I might just mention where we met. Because it wasn't that long ago. It was January, wasn't it? We both were at an event called Expert Empires, which for those of you who don't know is a bit of a online business marketing event for people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And I arrived late and I sneaked in at the back and I had a VIP ticket, and Adam was sat there as well. And we just got chatting. And actually we got chatting over the fact that we had these VIP tickets and there was no coffee and there was no biscuits and there was no nice things to nibble on, was there? It was terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. I think people were maybe entering the VIP area when they didn't have the badge as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were a bit gutted that the food just wasn't up to scratch, but never mind. That's just a little bit of backstory. So let's talk about sales then, and why people aren't necessarily signing the clients, because I see so many healthcare professionals who are doing everything right. They're showing up consistently. They're sharing really valuable content online, but they're still not getting the clients. So I'd love to know from your perspective, what do you think is usually going wrong there?
Yeah, that is a great first question. I think that Honestly, I see it as well. I see people, posting content and they just have in the mind, consistency, consistency, consistency. If I'm showing up, putting myself out there, I'm getting visibility. Why am I not getting clients? But, I think beyond that, I think it's looking at kind of the content and the clients as two separate things, two different entities. And really, I think people treat them like the same thing. So if you view your content as obviously building that awareness and it can build trust when people get to know and like you, but by itself, it rarely converts. It's a little bit like watching a TV program that you enjoy watching on Netflix. You're passively consuming it and you're enjoying it. And then at the end, you think, oh, that was good. And then you move on. And it's the same with content. There's so much content out there these days. Everyone's competing for attention online. So you really need to think about your CTA within your content, your call to action. So the bridge between your content and the next step that you want them to take, because it's really important that you don't just ask them to visit your website, but actually ask them to do something specific, like comment a key word, or click on the link and fill out this form if you're interested in, XYZ service. So I think the key thing is your CTA, giving them something specific to do that relates to the content. Otherwise, people will just consume it and then move on. They'll think it's good, but they won't take any action, which is what, as a business owner, you want them to obviously do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's very rarely a visibility issue. It's the conversion, isn't it? It's getting people to take that next step on the journey from moving from, well, this is really helpful, but actually, you know what? Here's my credit card. I'm ready to pay for this now.
Yeah. And one thing I would add to that is that I think it's easy as not just like a business owner, but as a content creator, because if you're posting content, you are a content creator as well, to kind of maybe take for granted how clear you think your content is and what you're actually asking from your audience, in your mind, because you've potentially wrote a few bullet points to help you, or you've scripted it or whatever. It's very clear what the point is and what you want your audience to do. But I think it's just about keeping it simple and really being specific with what you're asking them to do in the CTA, and not making it such a huge ask as well. Commenting a keyword is a really easy way, a really easy thing for someone to do, compared to if you were asking them to, DM me why you want to work with me, why this video was interesting, and, where you want to take your business. It's just too much. So it's just getting that initial interaction from them, and everything you do should be optimized to achieve that as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a common mistake. Let's just dive into a little bit about what are some of the other common mistakes you see people make when they're trying to turn that interest into actual paying clients.
Yeah. So I think really it comes down to how you perceive what you're trying to do at the time. So it's really about thinking about what stage you're at in the process. If you're getting someone to comment a keyword and they DM you the word, you're not going straight into pitch mode, because they're going to be scared off basically. So it's just about, bringing it back and thinking about having simple conversations and how you can actually talk to someone as a human being, just like you would a friend, just like a normal conversation, just like we would, Sarah. Talk. Ask them. You've commented, and what are you dealing with at the moment, and really understand their situation. You're messaging them to understand them, and ultimately understand if what you do can help them get them to where they want to be. So don't go into pitch mode, and take it in a very natural way. Um, don't be too pushy. But at the same time, if you really believe that what you're offering can help, then you should guide them towards that, through your funnel of like booking a call or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I often hear from my audience, particularly because we are first and foremost healthcare professionals, is that we don't want to push people. We don't want to come across as salesy. And it is a real fear, I think, as well. And I think what you just said there is it's really all about just having conversations with people. And something I learned very, very early on in my business is that when you're selling something, it's actually a disservice not to sell it if you know that that client actually needs it, because you're almost like withholding something that you know that is going to um, make their lives better. Mm, do you think there's any like mindset shifts that people need to, or that need to happen, that people need to undergo in order to feel a bit more comfortable and a bit more confident around selling their services?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. It's a disservice if you don't show them what you've actually got to offer, if you think it can help. So
Mhm.
just quick going back to that, I think if you think of yourself like a doctor, if someone's diagnosed with a serious illness, and you have the medicine that could cure them, you wouldn't withhold it, would you? And it's the same sales. If someone's ultimately in a painful situation, in a situation they want to get away from and they want to get to here, and you've got that bridge in the middle, your service that can actually help them get there, you kind of are doing a disservice if you don't tell them about it. Um, I think mindset is probably one of the biggest things in terms of like success with business as well, and converting attention into clients, because if you don't believe in what you're offering, then the client can pick that up. It's really contagious, that kind of energy that you give off. So I think you've really got to believe what you're offering, but you've also got to get out of the mindset of. I know a lot of your audience are from healthcare professionals,
Mm.
and it's easy going through being in the NHS and being a care provider. You're in that mindset of, I'm providing care for someone. You're not in the mindset of like, I'm going to be charging someone. And
Yeah.
obviously in the NHS, it's all, free, mostly. So um, I think it's just about the mindset shift between you're now a business owner and what you're offering creates value and people pay for value ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's something I've been touching on recently in my social media, actually, that there's a huge shift that we as professionals have to make, but also that we have to get our audience, our potential clients to make as well, because they do expect healthcare to be free at the point of need. And so when you're trying to sell your services to particularly a British audience who are used to the NHS, um, there is a little bit of work that we have to do to make them see the value of paying for this privately and not, just getting it for free if they wait for long enough on an NHS waiting list. So there's definitely mindset on both sides, I think, there. Um, and actually, that leads us nicely into the next question I have for you, because a lot of my clients and the people who listen to this podcast, rather than having like webinars or masterclasses where they might pitch their offer, they'll do discovery calls. That's the sales mechanism that they use to convert interested people into buyers. And I know that this is where a lot of people get stuck.
Yeah.
So I would really love to know from your point of view as a sales specialist, what does a really effective, high converting discovery call conversation actually look like?
Yeah. So I've actually got a freebie that I'll share with your audience like after this.
Right.
And this helps with this exact, problem. So it's called the Canyons Conversion Framework. And essentially it is built around what you're talking about. And I think it simplifies, what can feel like a really overwhelming process for a lot of people that haven't been in sales. And the way I think about it is, on one side, you've got the canyon where your prospect is now, the current reality, the frustrations, what's not working. And then on the other side, you've got where they want to be. You've got their desired outcomes. And in between these two places, where they are now and where they want to be, there's a gap. There's a huge gap. And your job on the discovery call is essentially, it isn't immediately to start pitching your offer, but it's to help them actually see clearly that that gap exists and understand why it still exists. So an effective discovery call has a clear structure. You start by understanding their current situation, not just the surface level problems, but what it's actually costing them in terms of time, money, stress. They might not be able to spend time with the daughter or the son as much as they'd like. Um, because a lot of people, I think starting a business means I'll reclaim loads of time, be free from my 9 to 5, but they actually end up working a lot more. And then past that, you get really specific about where they want to be, and you explore why they haven't been able to close that gap themselves yet. So what have they already tried? What got in the way? Um, because ultimately someone isn't going to pay for your service if they think that they can do it themselves. Really important if they have tried to um, resolve it themselves and they've tried for a long period of time to explore, what have you tried and why hasn't it worked? Because what we're trying to do there is actually get them to realize that actually I do need help. This is a problem I might have tried to fix it myself. I haven't been successful. I need help. And that's why I'm on this call now. So it's really reframing it and getting them to think, that they're on this call for your help. Um, and then basically, if you've done all those steps well, when you come to pitch, or if it's a good fit, obviously, and reveal your price, it kind of feels like the next logical step, for them to take, because they've said, I've got a problem. You've essentially understood what their problem is very well. And you've kind of maybe summarized, okay, so based on, our conversation, this is what I've heard. And if they are obviously a good fit, I think you'd be a great fit for what I'm doing with this. Are you happy for me to tell you a bit more about this? You pitch obviously what your service is, and then to them in their mind, they're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need because you've done the discovery really well. And I think what I would say is the best sales calls don't feel like sales calls at all.
Yeah.
It just feels like a really useful conversation.
Yeah.
It shouldn't feel scripted. And I think that can be the crux of it sometimes. People new to sales want to have this perfect script in front of them, and what are the perfect questions I can ask, and what are the tricks, and really it is just about understanding and taking that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people can overcomplicate a sales conversation, can't they? And ultimately, we call these discovery calls, but they're sales conversations. And so the way that I have a very similar description to your Canyon process that you talked about, and mine, I just call it the A to B method. So they're at point A in their pain problem. This is what's going on. Point B, that's where they really want to be, and our process, our signature framework, unique methodology, whatever you want to call it, is the bridge that takes them from A to B. And then, of course, along the way, they'll have objections. And so we need to be able to answer those objections preemptively, ideally, in your content beforehand. But if not, being prepared on that call so that when they say, oh, but this is never going to work for me, because you're ready with that, um, so that you can overcome those. And then when it comes to you presenting your offer, so one of the things I actually often say to my clients is always ask if it's okay to present your offer. Can I explain to you how I can help you with this? And no one ever says no. you
Exactly.
know, but it's just that permission, it's getting that consent, it's getting that approval that it's okay to move into that sales conversation. Would you agree to ask
Yeah,
the
I definitely agree with that, because it's not a case of, they're not likely to say no,
yeah,
but it does serve a purpose. And the purpose is that the prospect still feels like they're in control, because as soon as you take that away from them, then people become less open to hearing about what you've got to offer. And it was similar when I did door to door sales. The first impression was everything. So, in my case, just quickly, because it's relevant, is, I'd go up to the door and they wouldn't know who I was. So before I went into pitching the offer, it doesn't matter if I had the best offer in the world, even if I said I was doing something for free, people didn't trust me. So I had to bring the guard down straight away. And the
yeah,
way I would do that is, through first impressions, appearing well, dressing well, speaking well. And it's the same with what you've just said, asking for permission before you pitch or before you say about your service. they're essentially saying, yes, I'm happy to hear what you've got to say and I'm interested in what you've got to say. And
Yeah.
that helps them feel like they've still got that power. And in terms of the framework that you were talking about, you're absolutely right. You can view it as, a canyon, point A to point B. You can view it as, Hell Island to Heaven Island, anything that can help you visualize, anything that can help you visualize that disparity, that gap between where they are now, where they want to go. Your service is the bridge in the middle. Um, I can go really deep into it. I don't want to confuse anyone, but there are other things like there's different bridges. So there's not just your bridge to this other solution. There's different bridges and they represent, I can do it myself. You've got a competitor, you know, um, I know someone else who can help me with this, other options to get to that place. So the phrase I like to use that I've heard is burning the bridges. Sounds a bit abrupt and a bit violent, but it really, for me, helps visualize in my mind um, that analogy of, I need to burn these other bridges. They're saying they can do it themselves, but let's discuss why haven't you been able to do it yourself?
Yeah.
And they might say, well, I've just not been able to do it because, I just wasn't concentrating then, but now I know. And it's like sometimes you need to actually challenge them on something. What you've got to remember is that you have their best interest at heart in a way on the sales call. Of course, you want to get the sale if it's a good fit because you're a business and businesses need to make money. But ultimately, you're trying to help people. So you've got to just keep in mind that ultimately you're trying to help them. And if they're giving like a smoke screen, we call it, then you need to challenge that. And you can use the permission like you just did with that as well. So you can say, look, can I just be completely honest with you? Or can I just be brutally honest with you? And they'll be like, yeah, what? And then you've got the permission and then it's not being rude or, you know, um, pressurizing in any way. You're actually just calling them out, but in a way that's, less sharp, if you will.
Yeah. 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 Oh, I love that. And I definitely think that's something that I'm probably not very good at, and I imagine lots of people aren't because it does feel a little bit confrontational, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think what you said about the pre-handling objections as well is obviously very important. You should you should think, when you're on that sales call, wherever you're at on the scale, you want to you want to bring up those objections before they bring them up at the end. And then if you pre-handle them before you get to your pitch or reveal the price, you're saving yourself headache later on. Because if you don't handle them early on, when you reveal the price, they'll just say, yeah, it sounds good. I'll think about it. And really what that means is that I'm not actually confident that, what you're offering will get me to where I want to go. Or it might be that, I don't have the funds at the time to deal with this. Um, Another analogy I like to use for helping people and not feeling bad about it, which your audience might come across, is thinking of, again, using fire, because fire is like immediate and danger and they need to escape. Thinking that they're in a burning building, right? If someone was in a burning building and you could help them and you could just open a door to let them out, and it was that simple, you'd let them out. And, you know, in the same way, they are essentially in a burning building. They've got a pain. And for example, say their pain means that they get to spend less time with their young son growing up. Okay. That is their burning building. And that is a really, over a long period of time, that has a massive effect on them personally, on their family. So really, they are in that burning building scenario and they do need saving from it. And sometimes they might not even realize that they're in the burning building. So it's your job to actually ask good questions to ascertain whether they actually realize that they need that help and that you can provide it. And I think probably 80% of the conversation should be the prospect talking as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think what you just said there was really interesting that our clients will book in for a discovery call because they have type 2 diabetes or they want to lose weight or they've got irritable bowel syndrome and they want to be symptom free. But actually, That's the clinical reason why they're booking, but actually the real reason is because their symptoms mean they can't spend as much time as they would like to with their child. You know, their their gut is so painful and unpredictable that they can't do the school runs in the morning. And I think that's something that um, we really need to get good at, is thinking about, okay, what is the actual impact that this clinical problem, what impact does that actually have on the person's life? Because that's the reason why they're going to say yes.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
not it's not their, type 2 diabetes and their blood sugars up the wall. It's really about the impact that that has on living their lives. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
100%. It's tying it to the emotional reasons. People don't care that their blood sugar levels are going to go up by however many percentage points. It's what effect that actually has. And that if that allows them to spend more time, with the son or the daughter, or maybe it allows them to have more funds to treat the family, to take them on a vacation or holiday. That's the thing that really resonates with people, and what people, buy for. Um, so yeah, think about it in terms of less in terms of selling the vehicle of how you can get someone somewhere, and thinking more about the, desired outcome. Like what are they actually wanting from this? What actual effect is it going to have on their life? And if you can make it tangible, you know, putting numbers to it, it makes it really tangible. Like if I said I can save you, 7 hours a week, everyone can understand that.
Mhm.
Whereas if I said I can help reclaim your time so that you can do this, it still works, but it's like, what does reclaim my time mean? Because that might mean something completely different to me as it does to you, Sarah.
Yeah.
So it's being really specific and tangible. And I think it's important to point out as well, while we're on this point, not to brush over it, not to accept the first answer we get. So if I say, what effect would that have on your life, or how would that be? And you said it would be great, but why would it be great? Like, what would
Yeah.
it actually mean? What would actually change for you? And almost sometimes it's not intuitive, but going on the other side of it. And, when people are saying, yeah, I want to do it now, because I've tried for this long, it's not worked, I need help, asking, but why now? Like, why do we need to do this now? Like, what happens if we don't change this in the next 6 months?
Mhm.
And you really want them to imagine that, if we don't address this now, then in 6 months, 12 months time, this is the detrimental effect that it's going to have. This is where I'm going to be. And then it really creates urgency, because part of why people buy is urgency. And without the urgency, they can have the desire, and they can have you can have the best product or service in the world. But if there's no urgency, they're not going to take action now. They'll just think, oh, I'll think about it and I can do it next week.
Next week never comes, does.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It never comes. So
Yeah, yeah. So actually, we could talk about this for ages. There's so many things there that you just said, but I
come
just
on.
want to get back to what you said there about when the client hesitates and says, I need to think about it.
Yeah.
Because I would say, when I do discovery calls with people, one of the things they'll say is, yes, they can get people on a call, but they nearly always say, I need to think about it.
Yeah.
And for me, I always say, well, that usually means they're not convinced of the value that they can offer. They haven't really understood the value of the service that you can offer, or you haven't given them a reason to act now. So, like that urgency, like you said, or scarcity. And quite often in our field, it is scarcity, because if we're working with people one to one, we may only be able to work with 4 clients a month, for example. So that is it is not a false scarcity. It's not like we're saying, oh, this offer is going to disappear tomorrow. But yeah, I think giving people a reason to act now and not put it off for later, or, you know, I have to go and talk to my husband about it, that kind of thing. So, how can someone handle those moments where people are thinking about it?
Yeah. I think, pardon me. I think the worst thing that you can do when someone says, I need to think about it, is just say, yeah, no problem. We'll touch back next week. And it's just the worst thing ever, because, what is the actual purpose in them needing to think about it? That's what we need to address. Because in most cases, it's not a maybe. It's just a quiet no. It's an easy way to get out of the conversation and be polite. But you know, we do want to be polite, but we don't want to be polite just for the sake of being polite because we're just wasting each other's time, right? Um, so the first thing that I would do is I would acknowledge it genuinely. The worst thing you can do is disagree and say, no, you don't need more time. What you need to do, because then again, the guard comes up. So the first thing is to appease them. So yeah, I completely understand. But before you go, can I just ask, what is it specifically that's making you hesitant? Like, is there anything that you're unclear about? Because if there is, we can address it while we're on the call now. And then once you've asked the question, let them answer. If there's an awkward silence, great, because that means that they're actually thinking. People are sometimes scared of silences, but it's a good thing. Don't try and fill the silence. Um, because 9 times out of 10, what the real objection is, um, you can actually address it then on the call rather than coming back to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the second thing is gently bring them back to what they've already shared with you earlier in the conversation. So if they say, I need to think about it as an objection, but earlier in the conversation, you've done good discovery and you've discovered that they've been trying to solve this for themselves 6, 12 months and nothing's changed. Well, actually, do they need to think about it or do they need to take action? Because what they've been doing up until now hasn't been working.
Hmm.
And there's kind of different ways to do that. Again, you can ask for the permission. Can I give you a different perspective? And do it in a way of like, is it fair to say the decisions you made, so far I've got you where you want to be? And is it fair to say if we want different results, we need to, act differently, not in a condescending way, but in a way that points it out. And it could sound condescending, but at the same time, it's what they're not doing,
Yeah.
right? Like they're wanting different results, but they're not willing to take the action. Because it gets to a point where, they might say, yeah, that all sounds great. It's really interesting. Everything sounds good. Can you just pop it over in an email and I'll just think about it? And there, what they're trying to do is they're either trying to quietly get out of it because they're not interested, or they they've got fears there which you haven't explored well enough in the objections. It might be fears around whether it's going to work. It might be around the pricing. It might be around how much time commitment they think they have to put in it. For example, they might think that working with you, they have to put in like, I don't know, like 15 hours a week. They might just think that, they might perceive that. And if you've not addressed that or
Hmm.
give them clarity around it, that might be the reason that they're trying to get out of the call, where in reality, they might only need like 5 hours a week, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really uncovering those objections. Um, and yeah, going from there, really.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Let's just move on to talk about offers now. So, a lot of healthcare professionals, I feel, underprice their services, or what they tend to do actually is they'll offer one-off consultations. And to me, yeah, I'm going to put this on the line there. I think a one-off consultation in healthcare is morally wrong. I don't think we can give people advice and then not follow them up to see how they've implemented that advice, to see how, what the impact has been on those changes. So I'm just going to put that out there for people who do one-off consultations to think about. Um, but if you're doing a discovery call for a one-off session that we know isn't going to solve the full problem, because a one-off session might be an hour, for example, um, how much do you think that that offer itself can impact the conversion?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said about the one-off consultation, especially in healthcare, because healthcare is very, um, from my understanding, you're trying to take someone in a transformation from where they're at to where they want to go.
Yeah.
And there's obviously can be more devastating consequences if you just do an odd hour here and there and it's out of context to the whole picture and a really holistic approach. So yeah, I think, the offer is massive. It's probably one of the most underestimated factors in why people aren't converting, right? And I think there are actually two things at play here that are worth separating out. And the first one is the offer itself. It needs to solve a real, painful, specific problem, not a vague general problem like help reclaim your time, kind of thing. Something tangible, something specific that's clear that anyone could understand out of context, and something that ultimately your ideal client is actually losing sleep over, right? And then they need to believe that you can actually deliver it, which comes back to your credibility, your process, your results. And there's a guy called Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Yeah, so he has a great framework around it. And the stronger your promise and the more believable your delivery, the higher your perceived value. you know. But then there's also the second piece, which is just important, which is how the offer is packaged and communicated. Because again, you can have the best offer, but if it's not presented to the right people in the right way at the right times, it just wouldn't work, right? Um, for example, if someone DMs you the word, healthcare or something for a CTA for your post, and then you just show them the offer straight away and you're like, do you want to buy? It's just not the right time. Um, so you could have the best offer in the world and still hear, the crickets. But, if you're not talking about it in the right way. And I think a lot of healthcare professionals describe their offering maybe quite a clinical or professional language that could maybe make sense to them, but not connect emotionally, like what we were saying before, to the person that they're actually trying to help. So the fix is to actually speak directly to your client using their language. So pick up on what words they use, what resonates with them, and really use those words to describe their own frustration. Because when they see it, then it makes complete sense and they think that's actually me, you know. No, when someone reads your offer and thinks this is literally written for me, that's when the conversion gets a lot easier because you're targeting that right person, speaking their language, pointing out their pain point, saying, I can solve this. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And for any of my clients who are listening and you're saying, oh God, Sarah, you're always getting us to do this voice of customer work. That's why. And I think, if you're on a discovery call with someone, it's about active listening and paraphrasing that back to them because they'll tell you what you need to say to them in order for that offer to land. You're actually using the words that they've just said, aren't you?
exactly. When you're in the discovery call and they tell you, you know, they tell you something like they've been trying this for however long, and they've noticed that the little girl has been getting really upset because they've not been spending as much time with them. That's something that you should be writing down and coming back to, because when you're in the close, when you're trying to close the deal, so to speak, you want to pick up on that when they give an objection of, I don't know if now's the right time, like how much longer are you going to allow your daughter to be upset because you can't spend the time that you want with her? And another good thing I'd quickly say is doing a quick temperature check. And I'm a big believer in this, and I think it's really effective when done well. So when you've got the permission to pitch, you've said what you offer. Um, sort of asking them, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you never want to see me again, 10 being sign me up. Where are you at on that scale in terms of this program or this coaching getting you to, desired outcome, wherever they want to be? And what that really does is it just tells you, you're not guessing where the prospect's at in their mind. It tells you, it gives you a tangible number where they're at. If they say a 10, then there's no reason that they won't buy. And you can just say, great, are you ready to sign up then? If they say I'm a 7, which is kind of, again, like one of these safe numbers, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of saying, I like you. I like what you do. I think it's cool what you do. I'm not quite sure though, but a 7's kind of a good number. So what you could say is, why are you not like a 1 or a 2? And then they'll start saying, well, I'm not a 1 or a 2 because the coaching sounds good. And, the 1-to-1 sounds good or whatever. And you can say, oh, well, why, but why does that 1-to-1 sound good? Like, what would that actually help you with? And then it really helps them again think about it. And then you can also say, okay, so you're a 7, but I really want this to be a no-brainer for you. I want to give you the most value, you to get the most out of this. So what can we do right now to make it a 10?
Yeah.
And there's no harm in asking that, because it might be something really simple. It might be, I'm a 7, I would be a 10, but I'm just a bit unsure because I'm not sure I could commit like 15 hours a week to this. I only have like maybe 5 to 7 hours max because I'm super busy. And then you can go, oh, hang on a minute. It's not 15 hours a week. It's actually like 5 hours a week. And then you've addressed that concern.
Yeah.
Then if they don't give any other reasons why they're not a 10, then they're kind of saying there's no reason they won't go ahead. And
Yeah.
then if you reveal the price and they don't go ahead, that means there's an objection they've not told you about. So it's
Yeah.
just constantly going back to that objection handling and getting rid of their limiting beliefs, reframing their mindset, you know.
Yeah.
Um, like when someone says, if someone says, oh, it's a bit more than I thought, it's quite expensive, or, I've seen other people do it quite a bit cheaper. There's loads of ways you can reframe that. It's not about the money, it's about the value. And, you can say, well, the cost of this is 2 grand or 5 grand or 10 grand, whatever it is, but what's the cost of you, you know, your daughter, getting upset all the time? Like, how much longer are you going to allow that to go on? And then you're tying the value to, how much would they pay for their daughter not to cry? Again, it's bringing it back to that emotional, and it's not manipulative. It's actually just guiding them towards a decision that they should make that will be the best for them to help them get where they want to be.
Yeah. And I remember once years ago when I first started in the online business space, someone saying to me that people will pay more to move away from pain. So, reminding them of what the pain is that they've already told you about will help them move forward on that journey. And you've also just reminded me there about it was very early maybe in the first lockdown, I think it was early sort of 2020. Someone, a coach, actually, a business coach that I worked with at the time, was telling me about the temperature check thing. And as soon as I started to implement that, so I got into a phrase of saying, okay, you're a 7 out of 10. What would make it 2 points higher for you? And then they would tell you, and it was always something really simple like, oh, this sounds great, but I'm going on holiday for 2 weeks over Easter. And you're like, that's fine. We'll pause it for 2 weeks. We can do the extra 2 weeks at the end. Something within your gift to be able to change. It's very rarely something that's out of the question. So thank you for reminding me of that little story.
Yeah, no, that's funny. That's quite funny actually, because I think a lot of the time, if somebody likes you and they think actually, you know, at the end of the day, there's never 100% certainty with anything. So if you're on a call and you're telling someone what they essentially want in their mind is 100% safety, 100% certainty that I'm going to spend this money and I'm going to get this result. But unfortunately, that's, as we know, not how the world works. So sometimes being honest with them and saying, look, I could sit here and say that you're 100% certainty going to get this result. And, but if I said that, I would be lying, and I'm honest. Firstly, but what I can tell you is if you do this, then we will be taking you through this process, and that will help you achieve this goal if you're willing to work with us and do this. So it's just reframing it in terms of their expectations and what's actually possible. And it builds trust.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for healthcare professionals to hear because we can't make promises. We're dealing with human beings and their health. And, whether you're a doctor or a dietitian or a physio or whatever, we can give people the advice. They still have to then go and implement it themselves. And sometimes, that advice doesn't work because we're all humans with human bodies that all work slightly differently to each other. So we can't offer promises. So I love the way that you've just framed that, that, you can't give 100% guarantee that this is going to work, but actually this is the process. These are the results that we've had. If you follow the process, this is what you can expect.
Yeah, 100%. And you can phrase it, in terms of like you've just said, I can't make 100% guarantee because there's so many factors and variables, and you actually have to do the work. even if you do the work, there are factors and variables. But what we've seen is these people have got these results when they've taken this action. And, I can say that if you do these things, then your life will change in some way, and then you're not putting a number on it and tying it down. And it motivates them to take action, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Honestly, I feel like we could have carried on that conversation for another hour. There is so much in what Adam shared today, particularly around how we approach sales conversations with empathy, curiosity, and a genuine desire to help. And if you've been listening thinking, okay, this feels different, this feels doable, then I'm really glad. Now, we're actually going to pause things here because this conversation got so rich and quite long that I've split it into two parts for you. So next week, in part 2, we're diving even deeper into some of the big topics that I know so many of you wrestle with, like pricing your services confidently, shifting out of that hourly rate mindset, and really owning the value of the transformation you provide. We'll also get into the power of follow-up. Yes, the bit that most people don't do, and why it might just be the missing piece between you having lots of lovely conversations and actually signing clients. So make sure you hit follow, subscribe, whatever your podcast app lets you do, and I'll see you back here next week for part 2. Bye for now. That's it for another week. Thank you so much for joining me as we explore the abundance of strategies to help you recapture that feeling of possibility and excitement as you drive your business forwards and beyond the clinic room. If you found today's episode inspirational, then don't forget to like and subscribe to the show to stay in the loop for more valuable advice that I'm going to be sharing each week. If you want to be the first to hear about new episode releases, news and ways that I can support your business growth, then please don't forget to check out the links in the show notes, and you can also connect with me from there. Don't keep me a secret. I would be delighted if you left a review and shared this podcast with your colleagues. Until next time, bye for now.